Hello, I'm Paul Sheesley, and today we're talking about a leadership problem that shows up more often than people admit. A leader who is externally effective, but internally initiated. I'm bringing this up for three reasons. The first one, because teams arguing whether or not a person is, quote, good or bad, when the truth is often both. The second is because leadership groups quietly absorb the internal tax because the external value feels politically important. And the third is because unmanaged internal friction distorts culture. People stop giving feedback, they work around the standards become uneven. And I'll throw it. It's just because this isn't a debate, governance decision. And so if a person's state must be contained explicitly. So why me? I'm an executive coach. I'm the founder of EPC, Executive Performance Coaching. I in senior teams in pressure environments where execution, decision clarity have to hold, especially when there's a high visibility leader involved. I'm coming at this topic from three different angles. The first is performance psychology. What pressure and status do to behavior? The second is strategic execution. How friction slows coordination. Leadership. How culture distorts when standards are uneven. Now, here's the clean formulation. This person is an external asset and an internal liability. So let's clean this up a bit. Start with the sentence that saves teams weeks circular debate. This person is an external asset and an internal liability. Not are they good, not are they bad, not do we keep them because they deliver, not do we remove them because they're difficult. Both can be true in different directions. And the leadership issue isn't whether that paradox exists, whether the organization is willing to, one, name it, two, not pretending one side can't. So there's an external present influence. Credibility makes senior leaders reluctant to change that internal behavior in that leader. But internally, people experience the person as difficult, non-collaborative, even territorial to work with. So ultimately, the system has to compensate. People work around them. The friction becomes normalized in the chatter. Standards get applied. And leadership quietly accepts facts because the external value feels important. That is not neutral. That is a trade-off. So the strongest posture is not this person should be gone. Decision to keep them, the internal cost cannot remain unmanaged. So instead of arguing persons, the conversation into governance. We need to set clear expectations, clear decision rights, clear boundaries, and obvious as if internal behavior continues to damage execution internally. So if leadership tries to keep the upside while avoiding the cost, there are some predictable things that are going to happen. You will start to notice an internal resentment growing. Cross-functional communication and trust will weaken, and people will stop giving direct feedback, especially to that particular person. Others learn that visibility outside matters more than behavior, and the team organizes around accommodation rather than clarity. That's how the culture gets distorted. So here's a core frame. External effectiveness does not erase internal cost. If anything, external value makes it more important to be deciding to retain external absorbing the internal tax. And if that is the decision, then we have to define how much tax we're willing to tolerate and what containment looks like. This turns frustration into an executive conversation. So again, the real question isn't, do we keep them? It is, what structure contains the downside if we keep them? That's what that matters. And so what does this mean explicitly? So we may approach them and state explicit collaboration has these expectations, or we may have to be explicit in the decision rights or around boundaries and consequences. We want to make sure we're making this behavioral and operational and avoiding it becoming personal. And I think this is where many leaders blow it by going to the character first. So we don't want to say things to them like, oh, you've burned bridges, or people don't like you, or you're decisive or divisive. And so what we want to do is we want to approach them with cross-functional work, is repeatedly breaking down. That's a signal. Stakeholders are leaving interactions feeling shut out or unclear. That's a signal. The impact is slow around coordination. Friction shows up than we can allow or afford. That's signal. That's defensible, that's fair, that's actionable. So often the core complaint isn't difficulty, it's behavior lands as role protector or protective or position protective rather than enterprise bound. But don't accuse the motive. You name observable executive reality. For example, in several situations, the responses appeared more focused on preserving position than helping people in the organization move through issues of clarity. There may have been moments where the energy shifted toward territory or personal stake instead of shared problem solving. At this level, the expectation is visible stewardship of the whole, not only advocacy for one area. So we want to retain but govern, right? So this is a situation. So the plan is not to fix personality. The plan is to protect the organization from internal cost while preserving external value. That's the stance that leadership can rally around because it's reality-based. So let me give you a 5-part containment strategy that works, that you could utilize with. So the strategy needs to do, it needs to name the reality, it needs to set the standards, and create a short review window with observable markers. So in this case, we're naming the door reality. Strong externally, difficult internally, held as leadership data collected over time. The second thing is we want to focus on behavior and not character. So we want to explicitly describe the breakdowns and their operational costs. It was define what must change, have concrete expectations. So earlier stakeholder inclusion, no side channel decisions, clarify ownership, direct communication, bring disagreement into the room, avoid escalated communications. The fourth thing we want to do is we want to put a accountability window on it. Roughly about 30 to 45 days to marker. We will see fewer complaints, better responsiveness, fewer improved feedback from at least 2 to 3 key partners, and evidence of solve and not around them. That should happen in 30 to 40 days. External credibility matters, but it doesn't remove internal habits. Very neutral. So let me walk you through one. So for example, thanks for meeting. I want to have a direct conversation about something important. I want to start clearly that I recognize the value you, especially at the same time, I need about internal collaboration, because how work gets done across the organization matters just as I'm seeing a gap between internal effectiveness and your internal impact. In several cross-functional communication or work has become harder than it needs to, or leaving interactions with you or forced to work around you rather than with you. For intent, that's the impact. I'm not raising this as a personality critique. I'm raising this as a leadership and execution issue. What needs change: earlier collaboration, clear communication on and more direct coordination when they're. And so over the next, we'll be looking at this for a better cross-functional coordination, observing less friction and stronger collaboration with key internal partners. We can support that, but the expectation is real. That would be something that you could say. Now, what do you do if defensiveness shows up? Stay with impact. So if the person says, that's not how I see it, the response could be, I understand how it's being experienced, what it's costing. What if they're surprised and they say, people are threatened by me? That may be true in some cases, but influence isn't the issue. The issue is whether others can coordinate with you effectively. Let's say if they say, what are my external results? I do see that. This conversation is erasing that. It's addressing the internal side of the equation, which also matters. You want to make sure you follow through with the plan that makes it real. And it's a soft warning. What does a real plan look like in this case? So there's phase one of a direct reset. 2, 3 internal that must improve. 2, what are the behavioral actions? Inclusion, direct communication, clear, no escalation outside, internal resolution attempts are made. 3, has point. Back. Easier to work with, coordination's improving correctly, less energy in the milieu spent working around this person. Those are all. And then phase 4 is, if improvement is visible, reinforce and keep structure. Move from coaching to consequence. So a leader can an expert and an ability at the same time. The leadership issue box exists. It's whether leadership govern it. Organization stops paying that cost indirectly. If you're dealing with someone who brings real external value real internal friction? The answer isn't and it isn't personal warfare. Remember, it's governance. Name the doesn't keep for it in culture. Trust, execution. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.